blows my mind. I got rejected, I think 5 to 6 times before my first proper publication. I'm astonished by why people give up so easily.
Why should they not?
I think one of my biggest secrets is I have a lot of trust in myself.
If you've ever felt your heart race before speaking, if you've ever struggled to find the right words in front of a crowd, or if you've ever dreamed of owning the stage with confidence and clarity, this episode is exactly what you need. Today, we sit down with Soban, a powerful voice, a TEDx speaker, and a public speaking mentor who knows what it takes to move people with the words. Soban doesn't just talk about public speaking, he lives it. In this episode, he reveals the untold truths, the real mindset, and the game-changing skills that transform ordinary speakers into unforgettable ones. How do you tell a story that people never forget? How do you conquer stage fear and make it your power? What separates good speakers from great ones? Whether you're preparing for a TEDx stage, a boardroom pitch, or a classroom, or even a wedding toast, this conversation will unlock tools that will change how you communicate forever. Confidence, clarity, charisma, it's all there. This isn't just a podcast, it's a masterclass in the art of influence. So don't just listen, transform. Let's dive in. Thank you very much, Soban, for making time for the show, for the podcast.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
Sure. So tell us, who was Soban before he became a speaker? Were you always this confident?
Oh, thank you. That's very flattering. I think I was always quite outgoing. I think I started doing public speaking and I started doing leadership roles as early as grade 6. So that was the first time where I went in front of the crowd, a larger crowd of 200, 300 people. And it was for elementary school assembly, so it wasn't those big gigs. But I really enjoyed being in front of a crowd, and I think it energized me in a way that very few things did. So I was always a public speaker. I don't know how good I was. I think I started seeing a change in my public speaking in grade 9 around high school periods, because at that point I became the co-president of my junior high school. And in those situations, in grade 7 and 8, I would see other co-presidents and how they would speak, and it would be fine. They were good public speakers, and by no means were they bad at what they did. But I always thought there's a way to go to the next level. There's like good public speakers, don't make pauses, make eye contact, stay consistent in your tone, all those basic things. But there's something else. There's another level to it. It's very easy when you see CEOs speak, when they're announcing Apple products. Why is it that they have some level of captivation that others don't? And so that's what I picked up on. And I said, well, there might be something there that I can do to go to the next level. So I think that's when I started really honing in on my public speaking, and also not only how you speak, but also what you say. You could say the same thing in 2 different ways, and one could be really captivating, and the other can deliver the message, but not, grab people's attentions. So I started focusing in on that, and I found out that, anecdotes, storytelling, tones, stuff like that really makes a difference. And I think that ultimately snowballed into the public speaker I am today.
Wow, wonderful, wonderful. Did you say you started in grade 6?
Grade 6, yes.
Grade 6. So what is it like, was it like, because your teachers wanted you to do that came as a task to you, or did you volunteer for it because you wanted to do it?
A bit of both. In elementary school, the people that get chosen or at least asked to speak in assemblies are just good students. Those that show up, are respectful, and there's nothing beyond that, right? And it's also taken as an educational step to teach them how to public speak. So a lot of times, they're kids ultimately. No one expects them to captivate a crowd of 300 people.
Right.
So I was generally a good performer. I was respectful. I was a good student, and they said, do you want to speak? And I said, absolutely. And we've done group presentations at all times, and I always loved them. So even though it was just in front of a class of 20 people, I always thought the best way for me to deliver information is a presentation.
Wow.
Something about body language, something about visual elements, something about, orally presenting a message, to me, is a way of connecting with people that nothing else can. And the reason why is because when you look at something like I don't know, like text, for example. If you have to deliver a message through text, your message beyond the way you've curated is dependent on how the other person receives it.
Perceives it.
The difference when you are presenting is you are now in charge of not only the message, but also how someone can perceive it.
Right.
And that is such a powerful tool when people may not want to agree with you, when they may not want to listen to you. So a lot of times we're public speaking in settings where people want to listen to you, like they're coming to a TED Talk because they want to listen to you. Well, what about those cases where people don't want to listen to you? What about when you're standing in, in Young Dundas Square and you want people to stop and pay attention to you? That's where the good public speakers shine. So I think that's how I started. It was a bit of it was given to me, but also it was something that I want to step up to the plate for.
Do you think you're gifted? Because you're very fluent. You're very fluent. Yeah. You're good at it, right? What do you think? Do you think it's practice, or were you always like this?
I think it's possible to develop by practice, for sure. I mean, when I look at my first public speeches, they were awful, atrocious.
Were they?
They were. And I remember when I was leaving grade 9, we had an opportunity where people who were running to be president would be able to communicate with the people that were already president, just as a pass off the torch kind of moment. And so one of them asked me, like, how do you become better at public speaking? And I said, well, you can't use my measurement right now as where you should be, because that's not where I was. And I made a joke where when I was speaking, for whatever reason, because in pep rallies, you're in the middle and the crowd is all around you. There's no like one direction audience. So I would twirl my leg in a very weird way, and that was my way of coming to terms with there's a lot of people here. And it's not just my friends, but it's also the teachers that I respected very much.
Right.
And so I had to practice. I definitely had to practice. And of course there's some, natural giftedness. Alhamdulillah, I'm very, very, very grateful I have that. So there are some God-given talents for sure. But I don't think that's to say that you can't improve. I think if you are to focus on the crowd and the audience, it's a skill. And I think you can learn it. It's just you need to know what you're learning. Right. Because the stuff like don't, have good pauses, don't have filler words, make eye contact, stand up straight, don't read off the paper. These are very basic public speaking skills. To go to the next level, you really need to study those that are very good at public speaking and figure out those little small mannerisms they do that separate them.
Right. We'll dive deeper into it later on. You're very articulate, right? Articulation comes from good vocabulary also. Right. Did you make any efforts to build your vocabulary, or it's again natural?
I wish I had a better answer for this. The answer is no. I didn't study a dictionary, and I like reading, but I don't read that much. What I will say is I consume content a lot, and so that might be what makes it a little bit different is when I am scrolling on Instagram, or like I listen a lot, and I listen to people that they themselves are very articulate, and if they're not articulate, they're good at delivering their message, and that's what's really important. I cannot tell you about sales. I'm not a salesman. I can't tell you about immigration. You can. And so I'm good at public speaking, but even there's limits to that. And so when I am either, for lack of a better word, studying other people or consuming more consciously, it's people that are good at what they do. One person that I look up to a lot is Gordon Ramsay. And he is so articulate in his field, right? I mean, if you were to put him, in a bank, he probably wouldn't thrive all that well, right? But he's able to deliver the message of culinary arts and food and the TV show business so well because that's his craft,
right? And
so he might not be a great public speaker if you put him, at the Oscars, but he's really great at his niche.
Right.
And so that's the kind of media I consume. I look at people in their field and look at what they do to relay their specific messages. And that's basically the bulk of it. And on top of that, I'm very academically inclined. So, I'm a political science and criminology major ultimately at the end of the day, so I do a lot of reading. And I do a lot of writing. And I think writing helps me more than reading does.
There you go.
I don't even know how many essays I've edited or written. I've published a couple, and still to this day I still do freelance essay editing. So I read a lot. And so when you are reading and when you are writing, you realize there's a better way to say this. And so, it's very common for me to go on Google and see a different word for XYZ. And that's how my vocabulary naturally increases. And then the more you read, you're like, I would have said this exact same sentence in a different way, but this is better, and I'll improve that. So I don't think it's studying, but I do think it's consuming consciously.
I used to have a very poor vocabulary, and I remember, right? I think writing is the key, right?
It
So
is.
when you write things down, it kind of sticks to your brain, right? There are a lot of people, like every day, like there's millions of people consuming a lot of content.
Yeah.
But consumption has nothing to do with, good vocabulary or better articulation. I think where you come from is studying, right?
Yeah.
You read, right? And then you make efforts to look for better ways to
Right.
say a word or maybe a sentence, right? I think that's where it's coming from. Like I can totally relate to it. I might be wrong, but I think that's the key to a better vocabulary.
I mean, it worked for me. It definitely worked for me. And the more you read, the more you write, the more you realize that there's so many ways to say the same message. But some
Absolutely.
ways work better than others, especially in law. Like, at work, there's different ways. You read a legal document, and you're like, what is this? This makes no sense to me.
Right.
And the best legal professionals are those that can take this really complicated message and simplify it.
Simplify it. Right.
So that's the
right.
key.
That's very nice. Was there a time when you weren't fluent or comfortable speaking? How did you overcome that?
A time where I wasn't comfortable speaking. Yeah. Oh my God. You know what? It started in class presentations, believe it or not. And the reason why is because class presentations are more intimate. They're smaller settings. And so when there's hundreds of people,
Especially your peers judging you.
yeah, it's
That puts you in the spot, right?
yeah. I find I'm actually better at public speaking when it comes to larger crowds than smaller crowds, because with smaller crowds, all eyes are on you.
Correct.
And so I think one of the more challenging places where I have struggled in public speaking is actually when I was giving tours. So I was a senior tour guide at the University of Toronto, and so I gave, I believe, 96 tours during my 2 years there. And most tours were quite good. In my evaluation tour, I got a 99.5. So it wasn't not that in particular. It was the fact that when people aren't engaged with you, it makes it incredibly difficult. So I would have tours of, maybe, it could be a large crowd of maybe 20, 25 people, which is large but still relatively intimate. And so these people just weren't interested. They were just here. They just wanted to take a couple of pictures on the campus. They signed up as a novel activity, and they did not care about what I had to say about the university. And that can be very difficult. And actually, I would use the word defeating, right? Because you are putting your heart, your 100% into this tour, right? Like you're making jokes, and you have this script that works on 99.9% of people, but this group it's not, and it has nothing to do with you. These people are just here for the vibe, and so you don't have it in you to be like, okay, I'll just give them, a 5 out of 10 tour. You still want to give them the full performance, but they're not engaged. And so those tours are really hard. And I don't know if I would even say I really overcame it. I just think I became comfortable with the fact that some people aren't interested in engaging. Right? There's a difference between wanting to engage but not being engaged versus people who just don't want to engage. So my goal is, when I am seeing a crowd that is here for the vibe, for the energy, and they're not actually here for me, and they're not interested in what I have to say, is to keep doing what you're doing, and perhaps one thing will stick with them. And if you do that, then you've achieved your goal. In a lot of those tours, sometimes people will still say, I had a great time, and that for me is enough. I don't need them to say, like, I learned a lot about the university, or you're the best tour guide ever. My mission isn't to impress you, right? It's to make sure that you come to the university, you learn about it, and you feel good about what you saw. And if I've done that, then my job is complete. So those tours were probably the hardest in public speaking, because you're like, oh, this joke isn't landing. It's landed every single time. So yeah, those would be the times.
Wow. When doing guide tours, right, did it become discouraging for you? And did you at any point think that, hey, you know what, I don't want to do it because people are not paying attention? Or was that like once in a while people would not pay attention, but most of the times they would?
Most of the times people would. I would say 9 times out of 10 they would. But whenever they wouldn't, it would never be discouraging. And the reason why is because a good public speaker's competence and their perception of their own performance isn't based on how people who don't want to engage are engaging. It's with people who want to engage, right? That's the difference. And so in those cases, I'm like, this sample size are people who are not looking for what I want to provide for them. And if that's the case, then I'm doing a perfectly fine job. And the reality is that I went there for myself. I went there to make sure I can go to sleep at night knowing that someone had made an easier decision about where they want to go for university, and that's my ultimate goal. My goal isn't to make them laugh. It isn't to sell U of T to them. It's to make sure that they came for information, they got it. If they end up getting it in a very charismatic way, then that's fantastic, and that is bonus points for me. So it was never discouraging. I love what I do. In any role, I have always loved what I do, and I think that's what has made me successful in virtually every endeavor I've had, is that if I don't like something, if I don't feel it's fulfilling, I don't do it. And so tour guiding was one of the most fulfilling roles, and it never got lost on me on what might be, an hour, 45-minute tour. For me, it's just a daily shift, right? I had a class in the morning, I have class in the afternoon, I have a 2-hour gap, let's just do a tour, which is the reality of most tour guides. What might just be a quick work shift for me is going to be instrumental in someone's future. Because these are kids coming with their families, high school kids coming with their families, and I'm making this huge decision of where will I want to spend the rest of my undergrad, my 4 years. Where am I going to go? Which alumni community do I want to be a part of?
Right.
And so it was never discouraging because I knew that was my goal.
Interesting. So you did your first TEDx talk at the age of 21, maybe?
21, I think, yes.
21?
Yes.
Okay. That's a very young age. Where did the motivation to do the talk come from? And was there a turning point or a deeper reason behind?
About why I wanted to give a TED Talk? Well, part of the reason is you grow up, you see a lot of TED Talks, and you're like, what a platform this is. I mean, everyone who has an idea worth sharing wants to go on the platform.
Absolutely.
So in general, objectively, it's a great platform to share a message. For me, I've always been asked, in the most humble way possible, like what is my secret? Like that's what people have asked me, like, how do you do this? How do you do that? How can I get to the stage that I want to get? And I've given the same reasons, and my TED Talk is part, the content of that is part of the reason. And I just thought I'd like to share this on a bigger scale. And I think I just thought that the TEDx platform fit really well with my message in particular. And it was very coincidental that I came to U of T and they also had this kind of organization. And I think I just want to share my message on a broader scale, and of course, go on this very fantastic platform that for me is a personal achievement. There is a self-serving purpose as well. I have to admit is that it was on my bucket list for a while, right? I mean, you see these fantastic speakers and TED Talks, and you're like, I know I can do that. Ever had that feeling where you're like, this can be me?
Totally
I just need to get my foot in the door. I just need this one opportunity. When I came to U of T and I saw they had one in the summer before first year, so that was when I was 18, maybe 17, I don't even know what I was. I saw their list and I said, I want to do this. Before I end undergrad, I have to do this.
So at the age of 18, you kind of thought that you want to do that?
Yeah, I've wanted to do a TED Talk forever, but at the age of 18 was when I first saw my foot in the door. I'm like, this is going to be my foot in the door, this organization. I have to do it here. And here I am many years later.
Oh, wonderful. Did anyone doubt you when you said you wanted to speak on a big stage?
Did anyone doubt me? No. And I'm very fortunate about that. And I think the people around me have always applauded ambition. They've always applauded vision. And I think those are two very important things. I always think 10 steps ahead, right? Like one of my roles was tour guiding, as I discussed. I wanted to be a tour guide before I even came to U of T. I saw that job opening. I'm like, I want it. And in my third year, I became it. I was also the president of one of the colleges at U of T. And when I was 18, before I even came to U of T, I saw a position. I'm like, in fourth year, I want that. So I've always been very ambitious. And so no one has ever said, no, you can't do it, or no, you shouldn't do it.
Because they probably saw you speaking, right?
Yeah.
And they knew that you had the potential.
Yeah. And, people can see how good you are, but still be discouraging. And that's the unfortunate part, right? Like some people don't want your successes.
Don't want it.
And that's just a human nature. Sometimes it's justified and sometimes it's not. But I'm very active with who I surround myself around. And all these people have been very encouraging, and they said, you actually can do it. And I was so fortunate that the day of my TED Talk was truly one of the moments I felt the most love. I've never felt more celebrated. Like 10, 15 of my friends came.
Wow.
And that to me is a really big deal.
Of course.
Because although they've seen me do other successes, I feel like this was the one where people, even outside of U of T, can be like, this is an achievement. And so no one's ever doubted me. And the people that have doubted me for other reasons, it's in from one ear out the other. I don't pay attention to it, because what's that saying that if you wouldn't take advice from someone, don't take criticism from them? And I could not be a bigger believer in that, because there's like maybe a handful of people whose judgment I would trust over my own, and none of those people doubted me. So I had a very straight path, and I went towards it.
That's very important. Yeah. I've read about public speakers, sometimes even famous public speakers, they would get nervous before getting onto the stage. Does that happen to
All
you?
the time?
Does that happen?
There has never been an occasion which I've not gotten nervous on stage.
Butterflies.
But I don't even know if it's humanly possible to remove it. I mean, I don't even know how many engagements I've spoken at. One good example is mooting. I'm not sure how familiar you are with mooting.
No, I've never heard
I
of
think it's a
that.
pre-law activity, basically, for people who want to go into law, wherein we take real-life Supreme Court of Canada cases and we argue them in front of lawyers, law students, sometimes even real judges.
Wow.
And so there's a lot of preparation, and it's a very different kind of public speaking. So here, the more charismatic I am, the better, right? I mean, that's how engaging it is. In mood, it's different. You have to be as dry as possible. And you might notice the way I'm talking now is the way I would be talking in a moot. And so we have a saying in moot that says, if you think you're going too slow, go slower. Because mooting is a totally different activity. It's like courtroom advocacy, where, the more eccentric you are, it's actually a bad thing. So in mooting, I get nervous every single time. Not only because it's a competition, obviously, and you want to win, and you're in front
Right.
of lawyers, your future mentors, really, but because public speaking in that setting is so different, and you have to undo the things you learn. Like, I have to turn this side of me off.
Yeah.
And I have to turn another side of me on.
Right.
Imagine if the way I was talking, a minute ago was how I did in my TED talk. People would be half asleep.
Of course.
Right? And so navigating that is a challenge. But even in general, like in front of my TED, actually, you know what? My TED talk would have been the one exception where I wasn't nervous. That was the only, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, it was the only time I wasn't nervous. And the reason why is because I prepared so intensely for that.
Really?
They make you do 4 or 5 drafts of it. They make you practice several times in front of different people. You do a dress rehearsal. You do multiple dress rehearsals. So at that point, I had I think it was a 7-page script, single-spaced, memorized to the T. So I don't think I was stressed out for. But every other occasion, absolutely. And I don't think I'll ever get rid of it. And even, I speak with my lawyers. I'm like, you guys go to court like every week. Do you ever feel good about it? And they're like, we feel fine about our case, but it's still nervous. It's still nerve-wracking, like to go in front of a judge and to speak, and especially in law, like you have someone's, have a client's life on the line here.
Of course, yeah.
At least not so much in civil law, but in criminal law, definitely. So yeah, to answer your question, certainly, I still feel nervous, and I still power through, because that's just part of the process.
You said you weren't nervous during your TED Talk. I would be very nervous when I know that there are 15 of my friends who are going to be watching me, right? Like, does that not put a pressure on you that, hey, you know what, you have to really do well? It should be worth their time.
Yeah, I mean, there were 400 people attending, and of those 400 people, there was only one person who I really cared about, was my mom. My mom was there. That was the first time my mom had ever seen me public speak.
Wow.
That was pressure. That was real pressure, because my mom is my biggest supporter, hands down.
Of course.
Both my parents are, but they've never seen me public speak before, and I've been doing it, for God knows how long. And so that was nerve-wracking. I'm like, okay, I have to put on a good performance. But the reason why it still wasn't nerve-wracking is because I think one of my biggest secrets is I have a lot of trust in myself. I trust my abilities more than anyone. And so what I mean by that is I trust that no matter what happens, I will always figure it out. And if I don't know the answer, I will find the answer. And it's more of a mindset, attitude kind of thing than it is, a practical and having all the answers sort of thing. And I think that's what separates me. And the biggest evidence of that is actually how I got my TED Talk. So just to go back a little bit, I don't know if you know this, I got rejected 3 times before I gave my TED Talk.
You did mention that.
I got rejected 3 times, and so my 4th application is the one that was successful. All 4 of them was the same idea, charisma. The exact same thing. I didn't remarkably change it in any way. And so the first 3 were all written applications. I didn't even get past the first stage. So in my fourth time, where I finally made it a little bit juicier, I tried to add more words to it, some experiences to it, and spice it up a little bit. I finally got to the application stage. The next stage after that is a audition interview kind of thing. So in the way they did it is that they split the day in half. So the first half was a workshop wherein you'd get to learn from the current exec teams and other potential speakers, and you learn from their ideas and you practice, and it's basically trying to perfect your audition, basically. And then you actually have your 5-minute spiel about what's your idea, why is it different, how are you advancing, TED as a whole. And so my issue was I wasn't available that day. I had a contracted work event that I had to attend, and there was no way for me to go, and the auditions were during that time. And so I emailed them and I said, I don't know how I'm gonna be here. And they said, don't worry, we'll just send a video. Okay. And I said, okay, that's fine. I didn't hear back from them until the day before, and I reached out to them and I said, I have no instructions for this video yet. Please let me know. The auditions are tomorrow. And they said, 5 minutes, record on your iPhone, no big deal. And so the workday happened, and I was at work during this time. The auditions haven't happened yet, but the workshop has. So I've missed that part. I've missed the opportunity for me to actually perfect my talk. I have no point of reference for how other people are doing. I have no idea how other people are going to improve. I look at my email and I said, when should I have the video upload? They're like, now. And I said, I'm at work. I won't get home until like 11 p.m. And they're like, no problem, we'll look at it then. And in my heart of hearts, I knew that if I don't go right now, I'm not getting this TED Talk. They will make their decision by the end of the day. They're not going to watch my video. And even if they do, and even if they are impressed, they're subconsciously going to make the decision, and I'm going to lose my opportunity. So what did I do? I went on my lunch break. I went and prayed really quickly. I went to the place of the audition. I had missed the entire workshop, as I said, and I introduced myself. And people were speaking at that time, and I just went to the back. I'm like, my name is Soban. I'm here for my TED Talk. I've been emailing you. I don't want to do a video. I'm ready. I'll go. And they're like, okay, if you're ready. And so 4 or 5 people went in front of me, and I was so gobsmacked over how impressive these people were.
Wow.
All their talks were so good. And in my head, I'm like, I need to do something different. Remember, I had no script whatsoever. I was not anticipating this. I was supposed to do it at nighttime. So I just pulled out my notes app and I just started taking notes on the people before me. And I took notes on how can I make my thing a little bit more interesting. So the fun fact is, I had 2 elements to my TED Talk, if you remember. One of them was charisma and the other was storytelling. Mm-hmm. The storytelling came in that 30 seconds while I was sitting down. That was not my idea at all. 5 minutes before I went an audition is when I added that in there. And so charisma was what I always wanted to talk about, but storytelling is when I added that in there. And how did I think of it? The 4 or 5 people that were in front of me, I thought to myself, what makes their topic so impressive? They were all telling stories. And that's instantly how it clicked in my mind.
Wow.
And so without any preparation, no audition, no script, I just went up 5 minutes. That first initial blip that I had where I talked really fast and I went really slow, that's what I did. 5 minutes in, 5 minutes out. A week later, I got the confirmation email.
Wow.
So all that is to say is that in those moments, I trusted myself. I said, I know I'm good at what I do. I don't need preparation. I don't need to practice. This is my topic. And even at backstage when we were giving our TED Talks, all of us were telling each other, guys, if we forget our scripts, it's not a problem. We know our talks really well. And so I had so much trust in myself that it wasn't nerve-wracking to go in front of all those people, even if my mom was there.
Wow. See, that day, you just showed up and you did not prepare for it. But, it's like, what I sometimes think about is like you should be that ready that the moment the curtains get drawn, you should be able to begin the show, right? A lot of people are not ready, right? Yeah. There are curtains in front of them, right? And they're still preparing. And if we take the curtains off, they will not be ready, right? So you were that ready. Like, the curtains went off and the show began, right? How did you get there? Like, were you preparing in the hindsight? Like, maybe, you had a script in mind, maybe? Were you preparing at any point, or it was just impromptu?
There was a rough idea of what I want to say, obviously, right? I mean, if I've been wanting to give a TED Talk since I was, 18, I had a rough idea of what I wanted to say. And before the audition, they do ask that you prepare, jot notes or something, some kind of research backing up your idea. So I did do that. There's no doubt about it.
Right.
The issue is that I didn't know how to present it. My entire TED
Right.
Talk rested on how good I can present this. Because if I'm talking about public speaking and charisma and storytelling, I better be a damn good public speaker, charismatic storyteller.
Right.
Right? And so the way I guess prepared, for lack of a better word, is that I talk to myself quite often. So while I would be driving, that would be something it would be back in my mind. While I was driving here, I was thinking about how I would answer some of these questions, right? And so even when I'm in the kitchen microwaving something, I'm talking to myself.
You're thinking about it.
Right? And I do this for everything, right? So I
Correct.
guess it's not preparation in the sense that I'm writing down what I'm going to say and then I practice that. It's just, if someone were to pose the question to me right now, in this moment, how would I answer? And so you do that over and over again, and you
preparation
yeah.
at a miniature level, right? Like you're thinking about it, right?
Yeah.
It's like, you know, it gets embedded in your
Yes.
mind, right? And when you need it, like you can reach out.
Exactly. It's passive. It's at the back of your mind.
Correct.
And when you need it, it'll come forward.
Right.
Because that works in conjunction with your life experiences and what you already know. I already know about my charisma. These stories that I told are stories that I live with every single day. I don't have to memorize them.
Correct.
But everything else, the way I would be saying it is just, you know, while I'm walking down the street, it's in my head, and it's passive. You're
Correct.
absolutely right about that.
Right,
It's
right,
passive.
right.
And that also lessens the pressure off you. Because when
absolutely.
remember, you're doing this over and over again.
and over
So that tells you, okay, I've done this 10 different times, 10 different ways. There are 10 different acceptable ways for me to say this. There's not one script I have to follow. And that's the beauty of public speaking. You cannot work off a script. You just can't. Because maybe you have this really great point, but the audience is asleep. Well, now you have to go off of that.
Correct.
You know, in mooting, you can be interrupted and a judge can ask you a question. Well, now your script is garbage because you are now totally different from where you were.
You get thrown
probably have
off
a script,
track, right?
Yeah, you probably have a script right now or a list of questions.
Right.
If I talk about one of those questions before you asked it, you now need to adapt to it.
Correct.
Right? And so people do this subconsciously all the time where they know what they're going to say, but being more mindful and active about it way before you actually go up on stage means that when you actually are on stage, you can take back that small conversation you had with yourself months ago and it will find its way to your actual script.
That's the way I do it, right? Like, you know, if I'm preparing for a speech, right? If I know that I have to do a speech, right? I'll first write it down and then, you know, subconsciously think about it, right?
Yeah.
Like when I'm driving. Driving is the best time,
Yes,
right? To
yes,
think about
yes,
these
yes.
things. Or maybe when I'm brushing my teeth, right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking. So that's kind of preparation, right? Like I visualize myself going onto the stage, talking, right? With that energy,
Yeah.
right? I'm sure you do that too,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
And that preparation helps. Preparation, I think, doesn't always mean that you have to be sitting in front of the script, reading it, you know, rehearsing it. You know, is that how you do it? How do you prepare?
The nature of public speaking I do, like you can't work off a script. You just can't. Virtually all of my public speaking events are like, you know, larger events. So you need to captivate people.
Correct.
And standard scripts just don't do that. It's really funny. This past week, I was at convocation for my brother. He graduated, alhamdulillah, from UTM. And so they had a keynote speaker with him. And so he told a really good story, you know, about, you know, he's an entrepreneur and how he had a really sad death in his best friend died when he was very young and it motivated him. He had a teacher who didn't believe in him and you know, that kind of, you know, very, I don't want to use the word generic story, but very standard, what we expect with a keynote, a really bad event that motivates you and now you're really successful. So it was that very similar pattern. And so my brother asked me, like, what did you think of it? And I thought it was a fine speech. And he said it was just fine, is the word he used. And I'm like, that's a good point because he did everything, right? He said he didn't stutter. He made eye contact. He kept a very consistent pace. His vernacular was very good. So I just think what went off, and the only thing is that when you stick to a script, you lose the natural flow of a conversation, and that's what makes public speaking at a higher level so good. You're just talking. You're not reciting, is the word we use.
Very natural.
Yeah,
right?
good public speaking is a conversation. It's not reciting, and that's why I think people fall short. Wherein, you know, everything that you and I are talking about right now, we could put in a script. We genuinely could, and it just wouldn't sound that good.
Correct.
Because it sounds more rehearsed, and people like that element of natural naturalness, right?
Right.
And so that's not the way I prepare. If there's key messages, I certainly remember those and I write those down, and those are in front of me, no doubt about it. When I spoke, my college had a 50-year anniversary at the University of Toronto, and so I was asked to speak there. And so I definitely had, messages there, but I wasn't looking there. I was looking, to the people and seeing who's making eye contact with me. Let me make eye contact with them, right? Who is going a little bit disengaged, or what age group is there? They were very older people and they were younger people. The younger people were listening, the older people weren't. So I had to make a joke about, how old we are and something like that. And so your mind has to work in that way. And so as much as I would like to prepare in that way by knowing this is exactly what I'm going to say, it's a very predictable way and very stable way and maybe even reassuring way of preparing. It doesn't get you to that next level. And that can be very scary. Going up on stage and not knowing what you're going to say, like that's a pretty scary thing, especially if at the TED Talk, like I could slip up. There's two cameras on my left and right. There's the spotlight's all on me. I know my friends are recording. My sister had a camera right here recording. So I did, there are high stakes to it. But going back to my point, if you have full faith in your abilities, you're with conviction, you're good at what you do, then it just flows pretty easily.
Wow. All right. So you said that you do not script your speeches.
Yes, but TED Talk is an exception because they require you to have a script.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So TEDx has a script, and you are told to follow that.
Oh, okay. Did they ask you to send the script to them?
Oh yes, I don't know if it's the same for every TEDx organization, but we have managers basically. So every speaker is given a manager, and that's who you are primarily working with. It's a very intimate one-on-one kind of relationship. And so my manager, it was very funny because the managers get to choose their speakers. So based on the auditions, the managers are sitting there and they're like, okay, I want Soban, I want so-and-so, I want so-and-so. And so my manager told me a year or two after, like everyone was fighting for me, which was such an honor, and I was very, very privileged to have that. And so my manager, we met on a routine basis, and I think there were 3 drafts, if I'm not wrong. There's 3 drafts of your script, and so that is what you are told to stick to. You can't go off of that. Obviously, there's exceptions if you have forgotten your script while you're on stage, and do what you can to get back on. But you are asked to stick to it. So for most things, I don't have a script, but for TEDx, I had to have one.
Right. So for the speeches where you don't use a script, how do you string your thoughts together? Do you write a skeleton down first, right? Like this is the order I have to talk.
There's definitely a skeleton. And that the only reason I do that is because I don't want to forget what I'm even here to talk about, right? Captivating a crowd is only half of the job. You also have a message to deliver usually, right? So, we had when I first became president for Woodsworth, we had a small convocation for a program that we had that only Woodsworth College has. And so I was asked to speak there. And so I had a message to say, congratulations, graduates. I'm very proud of you all. Best of luck. If you need Woodsworth, you'll be here. So I had that written down. But the rest of it was all on my own. I said, students are the forefront of our community, and we have a position for academic bridging students. Please join us. We're just down the hall. We're here to support you. Student leadership matters and all that good stuff. And I did not need a script for that. And I don't think student leaders should have a script for that. It's more convincing if you're just looking and you're passionately talking like, this is what I do. I've been doing student government from grade 11 to 4th year. I think that's 11 years. For grade 6 to 4th year, I think that's like 11 years if I'm not wrong. So it's way more believable if you have a skeleton and you're just going off and talking about what you're talking from the heart. That's what really matters. So I do have a skeleton to make sure my message does not get lost, and I do the job that I've been asked to do. But everything else that actually captivates the crowd, that's not on a script, and it can't be scripted as far as I'm concerned.
It cannot be. Right. No, I completely understand. When it's scripted, you can tell, right?
Yeah.
That it's scripted, and it tends to get monotonous, right? After a point.
That's a good point.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. To keep it engaging, it has to be natural, right?
If you're a really good public speaker, you can work off a script, but have that naturalness embedded into it.
But then that requires a lot of practice.
It requires a lot of practice.
You have to rehearse a lot.
Yes. For example, with TEDx, that's exactly what I did. I wrote my script down because I had to. It was 7 pages that I had to, and I had to monitor every single word, right? I wrote every single word, and I had to be like, is this a good way to say it?
And let me tell you, it did not sound like it was scripted.
Thank goodness.
Right?
That is good.
It did not sound scripted.
Good. And the reason, part of the reason why is, number one, you prepare for it. But when you prepare for it, you prepare for it as if you're actually speaking it. And so when I was practicing it, most people have a script and they have two parts of their preparation. One of them is just memorization, right? Their first part is just, I just need to memorize these 7 pages. And the other part is, okay, now that I've memorized it, now I can practice how I'm going to say it. I don't think that's the way you can do things. Because at that point, you have not only memorized the script, you've memorized how you've memorized it. So exactly how you were going to remember it is how you're going to speak it. And you can't undo that. And so when I was preparing, I was not only saying, okay, I'm going to say this. I was preparing for, I'm going to say this in this way. I'm not, so, you know, if the script says, and you too are a storyteller, I'm not memorizing, and you too are a storyteller, and you too are a storyteller. I'm memorizing, and you too are a storyteller. Because if I memorize the words in with the tone, with the consistency, then that's how I will present it. And so if you're a really good public speaker, you can still work off a script, no doubt about it. As long as you are embedding your tone and how your voice rises and falls, if that is in your memorization, then you can definitely work off a
Voice
script.
modulation, intonation, you know, emphasis.
Yeah.
Great.
Like underline, this is what I'm going to emphasize. Or
Correct.
this is what I'm going to pause for a really long time.
Right.
And that can be hard, right? Because now you have more information on the same piece of paper. And that's information that you can't just memorize. Because it's not just words. It's
Correct.
now you are adding another layer to it.
That's right.
And when you're actually presenting it, there's 3, 4, 5 things going on in the brain. I don't have to just say, and you too are a storyteller. I have to say it in this specific way. I then have to pause after the fact for this specific amount of time. So it's a lot of information, but once you get good at it, it certainly is possible.
No, I can relate this to driving a car, right? It's not just the steering wheel and
course.
the pedals,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You have to think about a lot of
Yes, it's a lot of information at once. Like, you know, you and I are both from Brampton. You're like, okay, the car on my left and my right, right? How are they going to behave? So, you know, there's a lot to it for sure.
Right. That's wonderful. It's very interesting. Let's go deeper into a TEDx talk. Someone wants to do a TEDx talk, like one of the listeners, right? Where do they start? And tell us about all the steps involved. Like, you know, I would want you to go deeper into that thing that you talked about, right? The event before they picked the speakers, right? So tell us about everything. Where should one start?
From start to finish. And people have asked me this as well, and they say, well, what do I need to do a TED Talk? And I said, you first need an idea. Right? You can put aside your public speaking skills. You can put aside, you know, which organization you want to work with. Put all that aside. The first thing is, what is your idea? What do you want to talk about? And it's not good enough to have a good topic. One thing that TEDx looks a lot for is what makes your topic different. That's the unique thing. And on top of that, how can a vast majority of people, how can a general audience benefit from this? Right? It can't be that niche that only a few people can benefit.
Okay.
And by few, I mean it can't be something for a smaller age group. It can't be just for teenagers. It has to be for everyone. Like even, you know, teenagers, I think is a pretty wide net, but it has to be even wider than that.
Really?
It has to be something that the vast majority of people can relate to, can learn from, can build from, and can be empowered with. And so, you know, one of my friends wanted to do a talk about body positivity, and I said that's a fantastic idea. But there's so many talks about that. What makes yours a little bit different? It doesn't have to be this really revolutionary, remarkable idea that, you know, no human has ever thought of before, right? Charisma and storytelling is you know, a very common thing. But what makes it a little bit different? So what made mine different is, and that's probably why I got rejected 3 years in a row, is because I only talked about charisma. And charisma is everywhere. Like, people talk about public speaking and charismatic people all the time. And people talk about storytelling independently. I mix those two things together. And I also, the way I framed it is that anyone can be a charismatic storyteller. It doesn't matter in just board meetings or, you know, speeches. It matters everywhere. It matters in restaurants. It matters in networking events. It matters in family gatherings. You can be a charismatic storyteller everywhere. And that's what I think got me to that stage. You have to be way more unique and more niche with your idea, but the balance is niche enough that you can talk about it and only you've talked about it, but, you know, diverse enough that a wide amount of people can actually relate to it. And so that's the first element.
So what is your idea? Okay.
What is your idea? Number two, you have to think about yourself. What makes you qualified about this idea.
What gives you the authority?
What gives you the authority? Because remember, people are going to be listening to you. They need to be convinced that you actually are believable. Like what you are saying is what you're actually practicing. And for someone like me, it's very easy in that regard because my entire speech is about public speaking and I am being a good public speaker. And so it's very believable for me. But what about those people that are talking about the power of education? Well, anyone could talk about it. I could talk about education. I'm a student, you're an educated man. You can talk about education. What makes, those people different? And you remember the other, the lovely lady, one of my colleagues who gave her TED talk, she's actually traveled, to Asia to teach, right? She's taught, 7, 8-year-olds, and she's taught them English, right? And she also blended her, her culture with it because she's also from that part of the world. And so that makes her way more believable than if I was to do that TED talk, right? So it's about, what's your idea? Why is it unique? But also, why are you qualified to do it? What makes you better than these 200 people that can also talk about education?
And who determines that?
Well, I mean, it's the committee, right? It's whoever is organizing that. So in the case of TEDx U of T, they have speaker relations teams. So they have logistics teams and they have marketing teams, and one of the teams is speaker relations. That's all they do. They are the judge of that. And so part of it is you telling them like, hey, I'm qualified because X, Y, Z. Another is your resume. Like, what have you done that really shows that you're qualified? In my case, like I said, I was a tour guide, so there was a recording of me giving a tour, and so that was, I think, a really good way for me to show that I don't just talk the talk. I also walk the walk. I'm also good at what I do. Also, in my application, I said I've actually given a talk about charisma before. I think this was when I was in second or third year, so 2021, I gave a talk at a high school conference about charisma as well, and I think that really helped too. And I prepared a presentation for it, and I gave that to them. I also said, I'm the Secretary General of the biggest club on campus, so I will be giving, a speech to 1,400 people, if I'm not wrong, if my numbers are right. And so I'm very experienced in this, and I think that helped. But I think my audition was really the cherry on top, where it really showed it. So I think for people that are doing topics that are less obvious to the eye, where you really need like an authority behind you to show that I can actually talk about this, it's stuff like that. Like, what are your experiences that show what you can do? The other lady that talked about body positivity, she actually works in, she had lived experiences of body dysmorphia, and she worked at a lab where they dealt with, these kinds of issues. So all these sorts of things prove that here's this really good idea. It's niche enough that only I can talk about it, or it's unique enough that I can talk about it, but diverse enough that a wide array of people can believe it and listen to it and want to be empowered by it. And number two, here is why I, and only I, am qualified enough to talk about it. So that's before you even get to the stage, and that requires a lot of reflection. It took a lot of time for me to think, what makes me different? Because it's one thing for me to say I'm a good public speaker, but then when someone asks you why, like, how did you get to this stage? What can I do to be that way? And you're like, I actually don't know. And and you started off by asking, like, is this God gifted? And I thought maybe it is. Maybe there's no way for someone to get to the same level I am, right? And again, I have a lot to learn. By no means am I perfect, and every day I'm perfecting my craft a little bit more. But for people who don't public speak all that often, like, part of the job of TEDx, I now have to teach that. Right, my message has to be, educational in the respect that someone who is not good at public speaking now needs to get to that stage, who can't storytell now wants to get to that, and that's a really hard process. At least it is for me, and I have no doubt that those who have given TED Talks and TEDx Talks, they've had to sit down for a while and think, okay, here's my life story, here's what makes me me, how can I make someone else do that? So all that is the idea part of it. The next step is you want to see, how do I relay that message? What is the best way of relaying my idea? Because you've lived it. So all of these things are already in your mind. Like, if you explain someone, why do you work hard? They'll be like, I don't know, I just work hard. Like, or why do you have a good work ethic? I don't know, I've always been a hard worker, right? Like, people say, why are you so polite? Like, if I was to ask you, why are you so respectful? I don't know, I just feel like I am. And and then you were to sit down for a deeper and be like, okay, maybe I'm really good at public speaking because way back when I had a teacher that believed in me. Okay, how can other people learn from that? Okay, well, maybe part of my speech needs to be get a mentor. Okay. Maybe I'm a good public speaker because my parents motivated me a lot. Okay, that means I need to say something about having a good support system, right? Maybe I'm a good public speaker because I read a lot. Okay, that means I need to make sure I highlight the importance of reading. That means I need to make sure that I highlight good books for people to read. That needs to make sure I tell them a story about why I read. And so you're building your talk from there, right? About here's your idea, all right? Here's why you're qualified. Now, how do I relay that message? And those are, that's the next step, is that I have this idea that's really great and I'm qualified because I've lived it and I have experiences for it. But how can someone who has not lived it, who does not have the same life story I do, how can they take something away from it? And that's why TED makes this requirement that it has to be for people who haven't lived your life journey. That's exactly why. It's because people, the message can go as far as possible, right? I mean, on paper, you and I aren't that similar. You work in immigration, I work in law. We come from two totally different worlds. But why is it that, several months later, here we are talking about those same topics? Because it's applicable to a wide array of audiences. So that would be, once you figure out how to deliver it. The next step is finding out the organization. So after you've got your idea, you figured out why you and only you are qualified for it. And number 3, once you figure out how you're going to relay that message so people can actually learn from it, the next step is finding out what organization you want to work with. And so for me, it was pretty obvious. I go to U of T. I work with U of T. But obviously there's other ones, right? There's TEDx Toronto. Here there's also, I believe there's TEDx Peel as well for the Peel region. And so I don't think there's any major requirements for these. It really is wherever community you find yourself in. So, for U of T, you have to be affiliated with the university in some way. Don't have to be a student. Maybe you're a scholar, professor, volunteer, anything like that.
Oh, really? Well, I always thought that you had to be a student.
No. That's why half of the TED Talks were not students.
I was thinking, like, are these people still going to school?
No. So there's a affiliate speaker is the title they use. So the way you are affiliated with the university, even if you're not a student.
Oh, okay.
And again,
That's good to know.
Yeah. This is in the context of, a university TEDx talk. But again, I'm sure that, for TEDx Toronto, the requirements are much more flexible. So that's the one that I chose to work with, and because I had gotten rejected from them 3 times in a row, I had a sense of what they were exactly looking for, and so that kind of worked in my favor. But frankly, I'm very glad that I got rejected 3 times in a row, because I think if I gave my TED Talk in first year, it would not have been that good. I did not have that much life experiences for it. I didn't have that many stories, and I honestly don't think I had the ability to introspect as well as I did, 4 years down the line or 3 years down the line.
It's good that you think that way. Sorry to cut you there, but I was thinking I'll ask you this question later, but since you brought this up again, right, and listeners may be wanting to hear as to how it felt when you got rejected. Like, normally people would just give up. Hey, you know what? I wanted to try this. It did not work out. It's probably not for me, right? Yeah. What kept you going for the 4th time?
Honestly, I think the question is phrased the wrong way. I'm astonished by why people give up so easily.
Why should they not?
Why should you give up? That question to me is so backwards. Like, why don't you give up? I think the question is, why are you giving up? Mm-hmm. My brain can't even comprehend the thought of giving up. Honestly,
where does that come from?
I think number 1, it's internal motivation. Like, this is something I want to do. Why is 1 year's rejection going to stop me from it? Right? And you make a very good point, because people do give up easily.
They do.
And so, I've gotten rejected so many times. I've had more rejections than I have acceptances, believe it or not. And I think that's really important for people to know. When I've been on the other side of this as well when I'm hiring. And so I see people who apply for one position, they never touch the organization ever again. Blows my mind. I got rejected, I think 5 to 6 times before my first proper publication, right? And, the first time it sucked. Second time it sucked a little bit less. Third time it sucked a little bit less. And so my 5th or 6th submission was actually something I was proud of. And so I told people, I'm like, when you are applying, why do you just give up? And I don't know the answer to that. I don't know what will make someone give up. Maybe it's internal. Maybe they don't think they have what it takes. And if that's the reason why, that's a language I do not speak. I don't know what that feels like. I wholeheartedly believe in myself, and I know I'm good at what I do, but I also know I have a lot to learn. And so when I do get rejected, I'm like, okay, this just means there's something to grasp that I just haven't gotten there yet. So I'll try again. Got rejected in first year, second year. Okay, I learned from my first time. There's something I missed. Let me figure out what it was. Clearly didn't. Got rejected again. Third year, tried again, rejected again. And so what that meant is by fourth year, I had 3 rejections under my belt. Rejections are assets. That means they are something you can actually leverage. You can use them, and they can help you down the line. They're not something you put in the back of your mind where you think this is something that's going to weigh me down. Absolutely not. And that's where I think it comes from, where I truly understand the power that failure and rejection has. It is equally as possible as powerful as successes are, because they teach you something new. And that's exactly how I got there.
Wow. That's a great mindset to have, But most people, talking about TEDx rejections in particular, so they would say it probably, they don't like me or they don't want me to speak. And that is why the third time I was rejected. I think, I should stop trying, right?
Yeah.
That is where people will give up. But then you kept going, right? Because you have a different mindset. You know what? I want to, learn from the mistakes that I've made and make it better.
Yes.
And then, present my case better to them so that I get accepted. And you did the fourth time.
Yeah, and you know what? I'll take the case even further. Let's say you are good. Let's assume that you are exactly what they want, but you still get rejected. I would still apply over and over again. The reason why is I wholeheartedly believe in not self-selecting yourself out. And people do that all the time. If you don't apply a second time, you've already rejected yourself. You have rejected yourself.
Before
if you
anyone
do it a
else
third time,
has.
you have rejected yourself. If you don't apply for a job because you think you're not qualified, you have already rejected yourself. If you don't ask for a promotion or a raise, you have already rejected yourself. You've said no to yourself. Let other people say no to you. We always, when we're children, we learn that, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. If you don't ask, you won't get, right? The worst they can say is no, right? And so why would you get to that stage where you yourself are depriving yourself of an opportunity? It doesn't mean you'll get it if you ask. That's not what it means. Let other people say no to you. And I think, I'm very insecure about that. I'm very secure about that. I don't mind when people say no to me. I don't mind when people reject me.
Right.
Because it doesn't mean I'm any worse. It just means that there's more for me to learn. And that's a universal truth. If you ever get to a point in life where you think you have no more to learn, then you probably have a lot more to learn. There's an irony to that, right? And so I will never self-select myself out. I'll get an instant rejection. Maybe an automated resume bot will say no, thank you. Maybe people will even say, you're not even close to qualified. Like, why did you even apply? Maybe I'll get that. There's no doubt about it. But that won't bother me, because at least I did not say no to myself. And so I tell people all the time, like, even if you think you're not qualified, you still apply. And who knows? Maybe you actually might get it. You might actually get it. You have no clue what your competition is.
No, you made a very good point. It could be a bot that might be rejecting
Exactly.
you, not a person.
Yeah.
Right? And you might think that, hey, you know what? Probably some person rejected me.
Yeah.
Right? It's a perspective, right? It's a perspective that you move forward in life with, right? And I really like, you have a very positive mindset, right?
Yeah. And you know what? It's important to say the other side of that, right? Like, you're also human.
Of course.
It's hard not to feel rejection. Honestly, in first year, everyone, has a big ego. They're like, oh, I'm this, I got into U of T, University of Toronto. It's a great university. My GPA is fantastic. I have this great idea. People have told me I'm a great public speaker. I'm definitely going to get this. And getting that first rejection sucks. And
especially when you know that people have been commending you for your work.
Because part of it is like, am I actually not that good? Have I just been around, people who haven't pushed me enough, where, if you're mediocre, but people around you are worse, well, you obviously think you're a hotshot because you're better than everyone, right? And that's human nature to think that way. And so I just thought, like, am I actually not that good? And maybe you're right. Maybe I was absolutely right. Maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was. And if that's the case, I needed that reality check. Because if I went into it thinking, you know what, I'm fantastic at what I do, I don't need this, I'm too good for TEDx.
Too good for TEDx.
Right? I would have never moved past, I would have stayed stagnant. And not only would I have not improved, I would have been very egotistical, which it generally is a very bad, because you think you're too good for something.
Too good for something.
And what a horrible, horrible mindset that is, to think that you yourself can't learn, you yourself can't grow. And I try to implement that all the time, where it's like, I've given a TED talk, I'm competent. I know how to publicly speak. Doesn't mean I still can't get better. And so if I had self-selected my way out, I would not have 99.9% of my opportunities. In my first, election for U of T, I lost. In my second election, I also lost. I got destroyed, blown out of the water, both of them. And I never saw anyone in those races run again. And I got both of those positions afterwards.
Wow.
So in my first year, I ran for first year director, like very casual position. I was against two other people. Both were fantastic candidates. I lost by, first was a tiebreaker. So one person won. It was a tiebreaker, me and the other girl. And I lost by 1 vote. Devastating. I've done student government for, at that point, like 7 years. And I'm like, I can't win a basic election for the most casual position on the board. I kept on applying, and eventually I became the president of that same organization.
Wow.
We have something at the University of Toronto called the Governing Council. It's the highest governing body at the university. It's also, I believe, by number of people running, it's the most competitive election. I think I was against 30 or 40 other people. Across U of T, it's a pretty big deal.
Right.
Especially when we're only used to running against 2 to 3 different people. I lost so badly in that election, but in my 4th year, I won with the most votes. And so I never self-select my way out. Why should I give up? Makes no sense to me. That's a language I don't speak, I don't understand, I don't want to understand, frankly. And so I keep trying, and I would tell people all the time is to remove that possibility from your mind. Giving up should not even exist as an option. Retrying, letting someone else reject you, and being secure in rejection, that I think is the secret.
That's very deep, very deep. Wow, wonderful, wonderful. So going back to the steps and TEDx talk, right?
Yeah.
So where were we? So first
We
is
got
your
organization.
idea, authority, and then organization, right? So
Yes.
you choose the organization.
Yes. So now we've chosen where we want to go. I chose U of T. It was the most convenient for me and made the most sense. Now, between every TEDx is going to vary because TEDx is more independent than TED as a whole. So there's going to be something different. And I think the workshop was a unique thing in my year. But the general gist is, after you've chosen, okay, I want to work with this organization, there's an application. Right? For me, there was an application. And this is basically the same questions that we were just trying to deal with. What is your idea? What makes you qualified for it? And how is it relatable to a wider audience? And that's the gist of it.
Okay.
If you can't pass that, you won't get to the next stage. You won't even get to appear in front of people. I was very fortunate because in my application, they actually asked for a speaking sample, so a small recording of you speaking. So I think that really helped me out a little bit. And so that's the next step, is to get past that application period. If you are accepted for that, the next step was our audition, and that's the last step. And so actually, I'm going to do a second last step. And so once you do that, they had a workshop in which you can actually go and meet with other potential speakers, meet with a team, and just ask them, like, what do you want? What are you looking for? And so you work with the other speakers, try to refine your idea a little bit more, build off one another, practice, and then you actually do your audition. And your audition isn't, or at least mine wasn't, my audition wasn't a mini TED Talk.
Okay.
It was me reciting my application, basically. So here, hello, my name is Soban, and here's my idea, here's why it's different, and then maybe a small snippet from my talk.
Okay.
And I think that's where I separated myself a little bit more, because they didn't ask for you to give a snippet of your TED Talk. They didn't ask for that, and a lot of people actually did that. They went up to the stage and they said, here is this 2-minute excerpt from my TED Talk. But remember, a TED Talk can be 8 minutes to 18 minutes long. A 2-minute long excerpt will not do it justice, right? I haven't bought into your idea yet. And so those managers, they want to know, whoa, before you even get to that, what is your idea and why should I care? And why should I care that you're telling me this? And so that was the focus of the audition, is to relay that message.
Right.
Because if that message lands, then your TED Talk will likely be pretty darn good. But if you're just giving us a 2-minute excerpt from a potentially 18-minute long talk, then it actually might not land as well as you think it would. And so that was the point of the audition, is to, here's my idea, here's my research that's backing it up, here is why I'm qualified, here's why it's different, and here's a little snippet of what I might say. And that's exactly what I did. I said, my idea is charismatic storytelling. I think it's really important because I read a couple of articles about it, and that's some research I did have to do because they asked for peer-reviewed work, if applicable, and mine did have it. Why you're qualified. Although I don't think I touched upon that in reality during the actual audition. And then my opening 2 minute is what I used for my audition. And so once you get to that stage, then you wait for a decision, and they accept you or they reject you. And if you're accepted, you then are expected to rehearse. Your first step is to meet with your manager, and this is the person that will be communicating with you and will be helping you with your script. They will be giving you feedback. They'll be telling you, okay, here's how TED usually does things. This is what I would like you to focus on. Here's how you should structure it differently. Or maybe this isn't landing as well as you think it is. There's also some requirements about TED Talks. You can't talk about anything with religion. You can't talk about anything with politics. You just have to say generally positive, stuff like that. So they want to make sure you're meeting those kind of regulations as well. And so your first draft is your first look at, this is my TED Talk. This is what I want to say. Then they're going to rip it to shreds. They're going to edit it really heavily. There's a second draft. You draft the second draft. You then have to rehearse that draft multiple times with your manager. And then you do a third draft as well, and that's your final draft, and then you rehearse in front of the team. You have to cut some parts out, make sure you're on time. The max amount of time for TED Talk is 18 minutes. I think I was 17 minutes and 26 seconds.
Wow.
So I was very darn close. And that too was with material taken out. So that tells you about how much I was stretched for time. And then you do a dress rehearsal, and then you show up and you impress everyone.
Wow, wonderful. Okay, so I would go back to some steps.
Sure.
And we'll dive deeper into those ones, right? So talking about workshop, who gets invited to the workshop? Is it like people who have been shortlisted?
Yes, it's
You get shortlisted after the application, and you get invited to the workshop.
Yeah.
So what is the workshop about?
The workshop, now again, I wasn't there, so because I was at work at the time, but the workshop is basically, it's a collaborative way for you to bounce off each other's idea and learn a little bit about other people's talks. And so there's a very practical purpose for the team. They just want to see whose idea is unique enough and whose can we build up, who has potential basically. Because when you're coming into the workshop, you just have maybe a max 250 word blurb about your talk, and maybe a skeleton if you came prepared. Beyond that, you don't have anything else. So it is a opportunity for you to actually build up your idea from the ground up, right? From it. So you're working with your team, with the TEDx team, and with other speakers. Get some feedback from one another. You practice, and so it is a way for you to refine your idea a little bit more. I didn't have that opportunity, so I had no one to review my idea. There's a chance that I could have went in and someone would have said, honestly, Soban, this is not landing. It's just not a good idea. And there's a chance that I probably would have changed that, but I didn't have that, which is a good thing in hindsight, because I love what I eventually ended up talking about. But that's what it is. It is meant for you to be, it's a collaborative space for the managers to kind of assess your idea, but also for you to refine it in a presentable way for your eventual audition.
Okay, sorry. So I'm a little confused here. So first, you get shortlisted for the workshop. So does that mean that's the final list of people who would be doing the talk, or after the workshop, there's still some shortlisting happening?
So the workshop, there's no presentation there. It's more of in just your little group. You're not actually doing anything to be selected.
Right. So but you do the audition after the workshop?
After the workshop. And they're the same day.
Okay.
Same day. So you spend the morning workshopping, getting your ideas down, practicing, rehearsing, and your audition the same day, a couple hours later, is when you actually present. And that is where the selection is based on.
Oh, okay. That's where the final elimination happens, right?
Yes.
In audition. Okay. Yes. So up to the audition, you're still not sure that you're going to do the speech.
And one thing I'll say, I mentioned earlier that there was a second last step to it, is not everyone who's successful at the audition goes on to talk at the conference. There's two kinds of TEDx events. One of them is the conference that you saw, that I spoke at. That's kind of the flagship conference, 400 people. Right. There's actually another kind of event called a TEDx salon. A salon is similar in that there are still speeches, but there's like a networking section afterwards, and it's more engaging with the people. So it's smaller scale, smaller people, very few speakers. I believe TEDx is only at 2 in my year. So, and it's a more niche theme. And so that's not for the main conference. So at the audition, you can be successful, but they might not select you for the actual conference. So afterwards they said, you know what, you might be successful. We'll be sending out an email to all successful applicants. But remember, you might not actually go forward with the main conference. You might go to the salon instead.
Okay.
So that was very important for me, because I did not want to forget the salon. I wanted the shebang, the whole thing.
Of course.
And so that is a separation they make at the audition, after the audition as well.
Oh, okay. So, and then there are people who could not be invited to do the
Either of them, yes.
Right.
And I'll just say, like, yeah, I would not want to be on that TEDx team. They were such fantastic speakers. Like, all of them, virtually one to all, were fantastic.
Yeah, it's hard, right? To
It's
pick
so
people.
hard. Yeah. And I'm like, all of these are such great ideas, and they're so good at what they do. Like, I want to sit here and listen to your TED Talks right now. So it definitely is a very competitive process. I guess that's the point I'm trying to make, is that, the application is, hundreds of applications. Everyone wants to give a TED Talk, right?
Of course, of course.
It's the whole thing. And just making to that workshop is such a big step. That audition, they weed you out slowly but surely. So it's very competitive, but yeah.
Were there people who you thought were great but still did not make to the TEDx talk?
No, everyone that I thought, they made it to the salon. They didn't make it to the main conference.
Oh, some of them did
Yeah,
not
so
make
some
it
of them were
to-
fantastic, but they didn't make it to the main conference. And part of the reason why is not because they're not that good, but because U of T's has a balance between student speakers and affiliate speakers.
Okay.
So there's only so many spots in general. So you can have like 7 fantastic candidates and room for 8 speakers, but only 4 can be students. So you have to be a little bit more cutthroat there, and it's very unfortunate. But that person had a fantastic talk. They still had a great salon talk, and they still got their opportunity. They got their moment in the spotlight. I think that's what really matters, and their message still came across, even if it wasn't at the main conference.
Okay. But they still get published, right? Like,
Yeah, just not in the main conference. There's a separate kind of marketing, separate kind of, program for the salon speakers.
okay. Talking about managers, right? So after you've been selected in the audition,
Yeah.
so you get a manager assigned
Yeah.
to you. Okay, so manager is basically they are the ones telling you what to do.
Exactly.
What do they?
They're your coach.
They're your coach,
They are the
okay.
ones who are reading your drafts. They're the ones you are meeting with to get feedback. They're the ones that are editing your drafts. They are the ones that are relaying on your behalf for the actual wider team. So if I need something, I would just ask my manager, and they'll get it done.
Okay.
They are with you every step of the way.
Okay.
So
they're basically the bridge between.
Yes, exactly.
TEDx and
So
you.
and my manager and I met over the course of between my audition to the actual event numerous times, and she gave feedback, and then if I had a question about is this going to be fine for TEDx standards, she'd find out for me and stuff like that.
Okay, are these managers also good speakers or probably ex TEDx speakers?
There's no requirement to be affiliated with TEDx. It's just people who like the leadership element of it. It's less of a, you have to be a good public speaker. It's less of a, you have to be a TEDx speaker to be a
Okay.
manager. It's more of, it's a different kind of role. It's a logistics role.
Right.
Right. So you even if you're not a good public speaker, you can still get feedback, right? You can still get feedback on scripts, and you can still get feedback on your public speaking skills, even if you yourself aren't particularly, a great public speaker. So my manager, is more of a logistics role. So she was played a more operational role insofar as revising and relaying and communicating. That was her role. They don't have to be necessarily good public speakers.
So if
or
they are
TEDx speakers.
not public speakers, and they don't have to be, if someone comes with a public speaking background,
Yeah.
do they not feel bad to be judged by someone who's not a public speaker themselves?
No, of course not. And I think you need a little bit of humility there, right? I mean, like my manager. I mean, she has no public speaking background at all. But what she is, she's very smart. She's very brilliant, and more than anything, she's good at what she does.
Okay.
And so you don't have to be a good public speaker to make comments on public speaking. If I have a shortcoming in my speech, it is still a shortcoming, whether you call it out or someone else calls it out. And so I, as a speaker, need to be open-minded enough to not let that bother me. And frankly, if you're that insecure that someone who isn't a good public speaker,
Right.
you won't accept their comments, then you probably shouldn't be public speaking at a TEDx event anyways.
Right.
And frankly, I very much appreciate those people that aren't public speakers, because you are providing a perspective that I don't have. You are my audience.
You're not going to be talking to speakers, right?
Yes,
You're
I'm not going to talk to speakers, right?
Non-speakers, right?
And honestly, I think public speakers are even a harder crowd, because when I hear a speech, the whole time at my brother's convocation, I'm like, okay, I get it now. I know what you're doing. I know what you're doing, and it's working. But so it's a bit of a curse in that side.
True.
But no, it's not. It's not. It does not bother me at all. I can only speak for myself. I mean, I love when people give me feedback. I love feedback. Feedback is the best thing for me. And when I gave my first draft, there were so many comments on it. And I'm like, this is exactly what I need, because you are my audience.
Right. You should be good at giving feedback, right?
Yeah, giving and getting feedback. It goes both ways. And ultimately, especially when we're talking about something like a TED Talk, where you know your craft really well.
Correct.
I know public speaking like the back of my hand.
Correct.
But someone who doesn't, like, I may be taking something for a given. Like, it's obvious you have to change your tone. It's obvious you have to use body language. Like, this is just bare minimum. Someone might not actually know that. I need to spell it out for them. And so that feedback is invaluable, because I'm not speaking with public speakers. I hear my audience is people who want to learn how to do that. And so you do have to get the perspective of fresh eyes.
You know what? That's a great perspective. And I brought that question up on purpose, right? Because there might be some listeners who may be public speakers. And sometimes, it's human, right? Like the ego comes in between, right? I just wanted to show them how they can deal with that. And then when I am making a video, right, for my channel, right, I always ask other people who are not content creators, like, what's your feedback? Because my content will be going out to people who are not content creators.
Exactly.
Right? How do they perceive it? Right?
Yeah.
I want to know their perspective, because I might fall in love with my own content, right? But then, that doesn't help me, right? If other people are not liking it.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to have a perspective of someone who's not from your background, or, not doing what you are doing.
Of course.
Yeah. So what advice would you have to give someone who feels like they have something to say but can't express it fluently?
Write it down. Write it down and talk about it for as long as you possibly can.
Talk to who?
Themselves.
Okay.
Themselves. Talk to themselves all the time. People who have really great messages but aren't able to verbalize them or express them, oftentimes what to me that tells me is that they themselves don't know how to express it. So if you don't know how to express it, you have to test it out with yourself. You have to write it down. You have to recite it. You have to orally recite it to say, here's what I want to say, X, Y, Z. And then you're like, oh, that sounds terrible. Say it again in a different way. But you have to practice. You have to have an active effort on expressing your message. And I think people forget that sometimes, where they think if they have a message, they should be able to talk about it, all day, all night, perfectly, no preparation. And eventually, sure, you might want to get to that stage, but if you can't even get to that stage of expressing yourself, you want to make sure that you yourself believe that you can verbalize the right way. What's in your mind needs to get on paper. You can't edit something in your mind. That's just not how the way the human brain works. The brain can't think in negatives. If I was to say, don't think about elephants, the first thing you do is think about elephants. Right? The brain can't think about negatives.
Right.
So you can't say, I don't have this in my message. You have to write it down and say, okay, here's what I'm saying. No, this is not what I actually want to say. Do it again. Active effort. Actively go into this. And again, share with a friend. I mean, I'm sure like people are able to give feedback. You're like, you go to your mom, you go to your brother, you go to your partner and say, this is what I want to say. How do I say it? And so this happens to me quite often, and a lot of times people will come up and say, Soban, like this is what I want to say, and they'll tell me their message, and they'll be like, Soban, how do I say it? And I say exactly the way you said it right now. That's the beauty of it, is that you actually generally know how to say it. It's just you think you don't know. So a lot of times, especially when I'm essay editing, I'll be like, I don't get your argument. What is your thesis? Like, what are you trying to say in 2 sentences? And they'll tell me, I'm like, can you write that down, please? And I promise you your essay will improve. And so if that's what you're asking me, like how do we get to that stage, it's often to just write it down and to say it exactly as you want to say it. And then generally it will be the way you want to say it. And then you can revise it and write it down and edit and do it and get feedback with your friends and close ones. But that's the way I would go about doing it. And I do that all the time. When my TED Talk, I'm like, okay, I want to say so much. This is, 11 years of student government, 11 years of public speaking, yada, yada, yada. What do I bottom of the barrel want to say? What is my end goal? And I wrote that down, and everything built up from there. And so and you might be asking me, well, what was my message? What I told myself is, I want to tell people that charismatic storytelling, it isn't about leadership, it is about management, it's about people. Yeah. So and so in our current world, your success is defined by how people see you. And so if people can believe you're competent, believe you're secure, and if people can be comfortable around you, then people won't just believe your story, they'll be empowered through it. That was what I wrote down. And that was the last lines of my TED Talk as well. And so I said, okay, this is everything. My talk needs to say this. Doesn't matter how I say it, as long as this message comes across. And then I went back to the bare basics, the second step I talked about. Why am I competent? Why can only I talk about this? And I said, okay, here are some stories that, prove that I'm, good at what I do. And then I went back to my first step. What is even my idea? Broke that down. And so for people who don't know what to say, my advice is to just say it. Just say it, and it oftentimes will not be as ridiculous as people think it is, and then get as much feedback as possible.
Right.
And you have to be a little bit vulnerable, right? Sharing a message means you have to be vulnerable with your ideas.
True.
You have to be open to someone saying, honestly, Harminder, I don't think this is that strong of an idea, and you have to say, okay, sure. Right. What can I do to make it a little bit more niche?
Right.
And that's why we do any of this, right? Like we have to get as specific as possible, and that's the beauty of TED Talks. Why are so many TED Talks so different? It's because someone has had the vulnerability to say, here's my idea, tell me what you honestly think about it. And once you get that feedback, if you can condense your message in 2 to 3 sentences, then you've got there, I think.
Wow. It's really deep and powerful. Wow. For someone, you talked about vulnerability. There might be people who might be shy to talk to their friends or family, right? What can they do? Like, can they record themselves?
They can record themselves,
available,
but truly, you have to overcome that.
Yeah.
You have to. I don't think there's a shortcut around it. To be vulnerable is to say that I have an important message and I am ready for you to tell me it's not as good as you think it is.
You have to have that courage,
You
right?
have to have courage.
Right.
Because, and what a bad way of thinking, of saying, I want to share a message with the world, but I don't want to share it if I don't think it's good.
I don't want to be judged.
Right? You don't want to be judged. Going to the public eye is being judged.
Correct.
I'm sure there's people who watch my TED Talk and like, what's this guy on about? I mean, come on, man. What a boring TED Talk. I'm sure there are people on their phones, but you have to be open for that, right?
Correct.
For every 100 people that love you, there's probably 2 to 3 that think you just got lucky.
Yeah.
Right? And so there's no way around it. If you don't have anyone that you trust, that's a separate issue that you should definitely be overcoming, because if you have an important idea, it deserves to be shared. You owe it to yourself to be vulnerable. You are doing a disservice to your idea if you're not opening yourself up to vulnerability. And so it was very hard for me to go to some of my friends who respect me, who think of me as a very successful person, and to have that risk of, Soban, this is your secret. This is what makes you special. Storytelling, what does that even mean, right? Like that was a very real fear in my mind. Like when I went to my manager, I had to be like, maybe she's gonna say like, this is not nearly as good as your audition. Like, where is that part of you? And that's something you have to overcome. And so you have to be courageous, and you have to think, if I have an idea that is truly worth sharing, then I cannot be limited by my lack of courage. And that goes back to my initial point about self-selecting. You have already self-selected your idea out because you did not have the guts to be weak.
I like the way you're attacking negativity. It's very important, right? You have to be in that attack mode. Like, otherwise, it will take over you.
Either it attacks you or the other way around.
Right.
And I think the way you're verbalizing is very important. You have to attack it. Like, negativity is your enemy. You have to think of it as this entity that is pulling you back, and you have to think of it as pathetic. Like, you have to think like, you are damaging to me. You are withholding me.
Right.
And the second you self-select your way out, you are letting that negativity have leverage over you.
Right.
And you can't do that to yourself.
Absolutely.
You can't do that to yourself. You owe it to yourself to do better.
Right. Yeah. You know what? I once did this speech at a school, and then I kind of I put an object, right? Like I just used a prop, right? I said, you know what? This is negativity, right? the moment you say I can't do it, you're empowering this.
Yes,
It gets
you are.
bigger and bigger and bigger
Yeah.
and bigger, right? And one day it gets so big that it kind of overshadows you, overpowers you, right? And makes you look very small,
Yes.
right? But you have to take the power from it, right? And
Power from it.
yeah. Yeah, take the power from it and then make it look very small, right? You keep going bigger and bigger and bigger and it becomes so small that you don't even care about
You
it.
don't even, it doesn't even exist.
Right, it doesn't exist.
And you'll notice a common theme in everything I'm saying is I always go back to me. It's always about yourself. My ambitions, my motivations, my vision doesn't come from anyone else. I'm not doing this because I want to impress my parents. I'm not doing this because of my LinkedIn. I'm not doing this to pad my resume. I'm doing this because of me. I owe it to myself. This is something I want to do. This is something that's been on my bucket list. Whether it's a TED Talk or anything else, Soban in his heart of hearts wants this, and that is reason enough. And any kind of, mission statement I have always goes back to the person, to the self. It's all about you. You owe it to yourself. You are, they say you are the master of your journey, the captain of your soul, right? The Invictus poem. I might have butchered that, but anyways. That's the line that I learned in grade 8, where I am the captain of my own ship. And I need to motivate myself for it. And negativity is only hurting me. It does not hurt anyone else. It only hurts me. And so why would I want to give it that kind of power? Because you're right, it is an entity. Why would you yourself want to feed it?
Right. Wow. You're so positive. Where does that come from? What's the background? Like, were you always positive?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
Is it religion? Religion has instilled that in you, or your upbringing, or reading, listening? What is it?
I mean, religion is certainly a big one. I mean, religion controls a large aspect of my life. And, we learn that everything's a test. Negative things are a test. We learn that all the time, but we also learn that positive things are a test. But I think people don't realize that sometimes.
How?
Well, Islam teaches us that, when you have money, that's a good thing. You want money. What do you do with that money? You can do anything with that money.
Anything.
You can help people. Right. You can also blow it off on the lottery. You can go off gambling.
Right.
You can invest it in really bad places. You can also do a lot of good with money. Money is a test. When you have health, you can do a lot of good things with health. You can sit around on your bed all day and watch Netflix. You can also go out and volunteer in your community. That's a test. You have good family. You have good grandparents that care about you.
Yep.
You can choose to go to McDonald's with them and play on your phone the whole time, or you can spend time with them. You can learn with them.
Right.
Good people in your life can be a test.
Absolutely.
You have time. God has given you the ability has given you freedom of time. After 5 o'clock, you're free. You can do anything with your time. Do you go out and spread negativity and comment on people's Instagrams, or do you go out and live life for yourself? Time can be a test.
Absolutely.
So negative things are certainly a test, not easy, but good things are also a test. And so Islam teaches me that. It's that when I am doing really well, when I am on stage, when I'm wearing, I'm from Karachi, Pakistan, right? Never in my mind could I think that here I am in a two-piece suit with a spotlight with 400 people looking at me, giving a TED Talk on one of the biggest platforms. Like, no one could think that. But that's a test. Do I use that to become egotistical, that I'm not helping anyone else, become a TED Talker? I think now I'm threatened. Or do I use that to teach other people, to mobilize other people, to empower other people? If my TED Talk can get even one person who doesn't have strong self-esteem, if that person is motivated by my TED Talk, I'm the happiest man on earth. I've done my job. Those views, anything opportunity I've gotten a result of, none of that matters to me. It doesn't. And so those good things are a test too. So religion teaches me, Islam teaches me that. It's that good things and bad things are a test. And part of it is also, I know I have seen what negativity can do. You go out and I'm asking you as a question, have you ever spoken to someone who is generally a very negative person?
A lot of them.
It drains you.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You, like, your whole day is ruined. Yeah. And you're like, I was looking forward to this thing on Friday night, and now I don't even want to do that anymore.
Right.
It just destroys your self-esteem and your mood, and you're like, I was perfectly fine.
No matter how much you try to shield yourself, right?
Yeah.
I usually shield myself, right?
Yeah.
I also like to think very positively, right? But sometimes they have a way to get through that shield.
It does, and it hurts. It's bothersome. And another thing, beyond the mood aspect of it, it's not productive.
Right.
Productivity is what I care about. I care about what can give me the biggest return. And negativity gives you zero return. Every single situation. Never, ever, ever does negativity will lead to a better outcome. I'll give you an example. I was president of one of our colleges, as I mentioned, at University of Toronto, and we had an orientation week. Orientation week is the biggest event of the year. It is, you know, late August, early September. It is boiling hot. There are about 800 people there. You have to feed 800 people, right? And I was indirectly responsible of that. I mean, there were people who were dealing with it, but I was their supervisors. And so I was just in the office at the time, and one of my employee calls me, and she's like, Soban, we have a huge emergency. And this is exactly how I spoke. I'm like, what happened? They're like, we're out of food. And I'm like, did you order more? She said, no. I'm like, order more. And I ended the call. Me going on about, oh my God, who did not order enough food? How many people are we waiting for? You know, who should I blame? We need to talk to you. You're fired. Or how could I do this to myself? If I talked like, oh, I failed as a president. Oh, I'm a bad employer. That could have taken me hours and taken me in the spiral.
That's right.
But that doesn't matter. What matters is people need to be fed. Order the goddamn pizza.
Oh, yeah.
And let's get the show on the road.
Correct. Right.
And so negativity isn't productive.
It's not productive.
And my goal is, naturally, human beings, they want to feel grief, and that's okay. I think grief is a very natural part of the process. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel disappointed. But once you've, overcame that human need to feel grief, let's get to work, right? Let's get the job done.
Right.
And I've always had that attitude where even in my parents say that they've learned a lot from me. We've had really bad situations, in my personal life where, maybe I got a bad grade or maybe I had a really bad personal circumstance. But after that initial, natural human response of being sad, after that it's what can I do? What's the solution? Let's think about that. And this comes from my mom as well. My parents have been through so much, and there was a situation in which before we were immigrating to Canada, our passports got stolen. And so we had sold our house, sold our properties, and just imagine you're about to go to the other part of the world. You've sold your house, you have nowhere to go, you have 4 little children with you, no belongings, maybe a couple of, dollars to your name, and your passport's gone, you can't leave. You can't go back. And so we had a miracle and an angel who helped us really, and I am forever eternal grateful to that man who found our passport for him. But as soon as that happened, my mom came home and people thought that she would be this really depressed person. Like makes sense. You have 4 little children with you. You have no job because you quit because you were gonna leave. You have no house to go back to. My mom came home and she just slept. She had a bit of moan. She got back up and then we powered through. We figured it out.
Wow.
And people expect that, and that's what I don't like. Why do people expect negativity? Why is this an element? There's grief, then for whatever reason there's this step of negativity, and then there's a solution. Let's cut this part out. Let's go straight to the solution. And I've just seen how badly negativity can push you back, and I just think it's good to just work towards a solution because that's all that matters. Nothing else matters.
When you were telling me your mom's story, I could relate it to a story. One celebrity, I read it somewhere. So this celebrity, she said that when some negative event happens, right? I sleep on it.
Yeah.
Right. And then the next day when I wake up, I forget about it and move on.
Yeah.
Right.
Work towards a solution. You need to reset your mind, and it's only human to your psychological, basic human psychology. Like when something bad happens, you want to dwell on it because it's a natural response.
Right.
But we can control that. That is a possibility.
Right.
We should stop normalizing negativity. Right. Like when this is an innate part of the process, it isn't. Grief is, but negativity isn't.
Yeah, just like a boxing ring, right? Like when you get punched in the face, right? You fall onto the ground, right?
Yeah.
You just get back up, right?
Yeah.
You get back up. And then you start the fight again, right?
Yeah. I mean, I can appreciate that you appreciate talking about positivity. Right. Have you ever talked to a negative person about positivity? Ever done that before?
I've tried, but
and it's like you're speaking a foreign language to them. It's like wait, what? I don't have to think about this.
Right.
And we're like, yeah, you can just go right to the solution.
Right.
And that's fair because no one ever teaches us that. No one ever teaches us, the toxicity of negativity.
Oh yeah.
And my employees came to me afterwards. They're like, Soban, like you didn't yell at anyone. You just went to it, and I said, and I hope you take something away from that.
That's right. That's being a good leader, right? That's one of the traits.
Part of that is leadership, is where I don't care about naming, I don't care about blaming, I don't care about shaming. Let's just get the job done, shall we? And if I do need to worry about firing someone, that's a later problem, and that's in private. That's not the solution. Firing is not the solution.
Right.
Here's
Right.
the problem. There's this bridge we need to cross. The only way we can way to get to that bridge is stop looking left and right and go towards the solution.
Right, right.
And the only way to do that is to push negativity to the side and attack it.
Right. And I think as a leader, right, somewhere we are also responsible for what happens around
Of
us,
course,
right?
of course.
Maybe you could have made that sure that you had enough food, right? Probably that's why you did not get mad at that person,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
You know, probably you thought that you were also equally
Of course.
accountable for it.
I am the only person accountable for it,
Right.
and that's what I told my team. I tell two things to my team all the time: is that I am the least important person here. I don't care if I'm the president. Believe it or not, I'm actually the least important person here. Anyone who cleans up, who picks up the garbage after food, they're actually more important than I am. Of
course.
Anyone who's going to Costco to get drinks, they're way more important than I am. I'm the least important person here, and the reason why is because if something were to happen to me, there would be a little bit of shifts in leadership, and there would be a little bit of chaos. But eventually, the show would go on. But if all of you were to disappear, there would be no show as we know it.
You know, that's a very humble way of putting it, right? You know, and leaders have to be humble,
They
right?
have to. Humility
they
is so
have to, how do I put it? You know, acknowledge the work that
Exactly.
their team is doing, right?
And people don't like that because when people ask about leadership, they're like, wait. So when I tell people that in my transition meetings to the new president, I said, by the way, I'm the least important person, just so you know. And I told this to my team meetings as well. And someone came to me and they were like, you don't think you're a good leader? I said, that's not what I said. They're like, so, and they said, well, you don't think you're good at organizing? You think, and I'm like, I didn't say that at all. And I said, humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. Right? It's not centralizing yourself in the discussions, right? I know I'm great at what I do. The fact that I'm the least important person doesn't change that. What it means is that I am not the reason why this is happening. Simon Sinek is one of my most favorite speakers. You've heard of Simon Sinek? That's wonderful. And one of the things he said about leadership is that managers or leaders aren't in charge of the outcome. They're in charge of the people, in charge of the people, in charge of the people, who are in charge of the people, who are in charge of the outcome. Right? And that has stuck with me for so long. But that being said, the outcome is still my responsibility at the end of the day. Food wasn't there, my fault.
Yes.
We were late to something, that's my fault.
Yeah. You take accountability for everything, right?
Right.
But you give the credit to your team.
Always.
Yeah.
Credit always to your team. You always absorb the blame and you share the credit. And there's another reason for that that's more positive. Well, positive for you anyway, is that the leader almost always gets the credit, even if they don't deserve it. Like, there have been so many events where where our administration came to me and they were like, you did such a good job. I did nothing. I'm not being humble. I literally did not do anything. I was not a part of this event whatsoever, right? And so I didn't do anything, but I still get the credit for it. And that can't happen. My job as a leader is to say, I appreciate it so much, but actually, those two people over there, they're in charge. Let me take you to them. You can let them know what a great job you did, right? At the end of the event, because presidents they have to speak at the end to thank everyone for coming, and I would say, well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for being here. I really appreciate it. But truly, there are two people who are in charge of this, and it's X, Y, Z, and ABC. Let's give them a huge round of applause. That's what you have to do, because the leader will always get the credit, whether they deserve it or not. The team won't.
Correct.
The team won't, and that to me is such a tragedy in our lives. But it's up to the leaders to change that.
Absolutely. What's your message to young people who want to speak, share, or lead, but feel too early or unqualified?
There's no such thing as unqualified as far as I'm concerned. And the reason why is because you can learn something from everyone. You can learn something from good performers. And, I'm sure as, you have employees here, you can probably learn something from bad performers as well.
Of course.
Right? You can learn something from everyone. And you have to know, you have to believe in that. You have to believe that what I have, it might not be a lot, right? And I may have a lot to learn, but I do have something to offer the world. Everyone does. That's how humans work. We all have something. There is no two humans who have lived the same lives, and the lessons and values we have derived from our experiences. So there's no such thing as unqualified. But my biggest piece of advice is to never self-select yourself out of an opportunity. Apply for everything, every single thing. Don't ever be the person who says no to yourself. And I've talked about this before, but it's ridiculous to me, and it kind of angers me sometimes, really, where people will just say no to themselves, and that just makes me so sad. I know so many very talented young people, high schoolers, junior high students who will say, Soban, I want to do this, but maybe 4 years down the line. No, now. You will do it now. You'll get rejected. Maybe you'll get rejected. Maybe you won't get it. But you are now one rejection closer. You're always one rejection closer to your success. And isn't that the whole point? To get closer? That's the whole reason why any of us do this. And another thing is you need to have a mentor. You need to have someone or something you look at. It doesn't have to be a deep interpersonal relationship, because I know it's very hard to find these days, which is unfortunate. And that's why I'm sure you try to give back as much as you can, and I try to give back as much as I can. But young people need that. They need someone to guide them. And I remember, I had no one. No one's taught me public speaking. Everything was on my own. No one has told me to do leadership. No one has told me to do Model UN. No one told me to do student government. I just did it because I wanted to. Right? And so find someone or something that you can learn from and constantly be learning. Learning never stops. In anything. I am learning every single day. Believe it or not, I've learned so much just from talking to you. From the very way you are listening to me, from the way you are asking me questions, from the way you've greeted me, I've already learned things. Right? And it might be things I already know, but we can always use a reminder for it. And so for anyone who's feeling discouraged or feeling unqualified, well, part of the reason is because maybe you need to grow more and you need to learn more. So go and learn and do as much as you can. Volunteer. I love volunteering. Volunteering is such a great experience. Going and helping people with no stakes whatsoever is very grounding, and it teaches you so much about yourself. And I think if I was to give another piece of advice, is to know yourself inside and out. I think one of my biggest strengths is that I know every detail about myself. I know my self-awareness. I know how I work. I know who I work really well around. I know my strengths. I know my weaknesses. I know what motivates me. I know what discourages me. I know what I need after a long day after work. I know how many hours of sleep I need. I know what kind of work environment is best for me. I know all of these things. If you don't know any of these things, you need to work on yourself. Because once you know that, that means every environment you go to, you can control to be extraordinarily conducive to your own success.
Correct.
When I am given an opportunity, if I know that I work in a certain way, I will make it so that environment is conducive to that method that works for me.
Absolutely.
Right? If I'm feeling weak, if I'm feeling discouraged, I know exactly what will fix that. Right? So we talked about negativity earlier, but you're right. It's natural. It's a human response. If I don't know what I can use to combat negativity, I will never overcome it.
Right,
and so
right,
how do you go about doing that? You might be asking, well, how do I learn more about myself? It's me. I know me. No, you don't. You have to go out in the real world, and you have to put yourself in different situations.
You have to know your triggers, right?
That's the word I'm looking for. You have to know your triggers. I work in civil litigation. We get people who are very anxious, and it's fair. People have $1 million losses against them and they have no idea what to do. And so sometimes they can be really aggressive, right? And so sometimes they yell at you, and I'm like, calm the hell down. Who are you? Like, I'm not the one you need to be mad at here. But I found that can be a trigger for me. When people raise their voice and they get aggressive, what does that trigger in me? I reciprocate the exact same way. I start getting hyper and I start talking loudly. And now I know that. And so when people do that, I just, grit my teeth and just keep it in. And I've noticed a huge difference, right? And so you don't know those things until you go out in the real world. You deal with people who aren't maybe that nice, or maybe are nice but are different. Right? I mean, in my head, everyone when I was young, I thought everyone works the same way as I do. Everyone needs things written down. Everyone is good at public speaking. Everyone, wants to talk in class. Everyone wants to sit in the front row. But that's not the way it is. Right. And it's not the way it should be. There's different kinds of people. Right. But you don't know that until you go in the real world and you actually meet with people. All of the people you're talking, these young people, these people who think they're unqualified or they're nervous, they've never gone beyond their little friend group. Right. And I've seen that. And I think that's a disservice to yourself. You have to explore. You have to know more about yourself. Right. I had so many people, who I knew in the past that never moved past, their small group. They never moved past that. They never, met different kinds of people. They were never put in different environments. And, I support that to a certain extent. There's comfort in stability and predictability. I get that, and we all need a little bit of stability. But if you want to go to the next step, if you want to make something of yourself, you have to be uncomfortable. It's not fun being yelled at. No one likes doing that, right? And my job is so wonderful. I love my job. And, for, one bad caller, there's 200 really nice ones. And I really feel like I can make a difference. But, I go back to that point about why am I so positive? When you hear about other people's problems, you realize that your problems aren't actually that big, right? I had this really bad situation where someone called in, and basically she had a situation where her mother had died in a really bad car accident. The insurance wouldn't cover it. She got a brain concussion. Insurance wouldn't cover her either. And she was like, Soban, I just want to kill myself. I just can't live my life like this. This was a Wednesday on a 9 a.m. call on a Wednesday morning. And that just really humbles you. Like, I was worried about X, Y, Z thing when there's people going on about this.
If you've heard about this recent crash that happened in India, right?
Yep.
Plane.
Awful.
We are immigrants. We could have been on that plane.
Could have been us.
Right? Could have been us, right?
Yeah.
How big of a problem that is for the family members right now compared to the ones that we are dealing with, right? Like, we are sitting here doing the podcast, right?
Yeah.
Successfully.
Yeah.
Right? It could have been us, right? How small are our problems?
Super small.
Right?
That's just so humbling. And I use that to tell people to go out in the real world, volunteer. Video games are fun. I don't doubt. I love video games. Watching Netflix is fun, but it doesn't get you anywhere. Right? It's people. People are the secret to everything. They're the secret to your demise and the secret to your success. And so if you want to be in control of your own life, learn people. How do people act? How do people that are different from me behave? What can I use to get them on my side? People will disagree with you all the time, right? Like, I mean, there'll be people, your boss, your colleagues, your peers, your presentation team members. People will disagree with you all the time. It's your goal to work with them, not against them.
That's right.
And so your roommates, your people who you live with, your family, your brothers, your sister, your parents, they will always disagree with you. There will always be a chance of that. But if you stay confined to that little life of yours, you will never grow. You will always be that same little boy you were, in third grade playing video games.
That's right. I think in the coming days, right, learning how to deal with people will become the number one skill, right? Like, because we're so used to machines right now, like technology, right? And we have forgotten how to connect with people, right?
Yeah.
I think this is going to become the number one skill, right?
It's these soft skills. And you have to work with people. And going back to that discussion on leadership, I think it's an African proverb that basically translates to, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together, right? And that's the people are the secret to it. You can't do anything on your own. Nothing on your own can you do.
Right.
And so if you build a team and you work with it and you figure out, okay, here are these different people. I need to figure them out and work with them. And before you do that, you have to know yourself. What are you good at doing?
Correct.
And you have to be vulnerable.
Correct.
Like my name is Harminder and I'm great at these 2,000 things, but truly, this is 2 things that I can really work on. And if you know that, then there is no one else that can tear you down, because you know your shortcomings already.
Right.
And you know how to work against them, and you know how to navigate through them.
Yeah. Wonderful. All right. So, Soban, last question. I so wish it never ended. But yeah, well, I may invite you for another episode, right?
That'd be very fun.
For more questions. But the last question that I have for today is, if you could whisper one belief into the ears of every future speaker in the world, what would it be?
I would say the audience is your indicator. The audience is the only thing that matters. You can throw your message out the door. If your audience has not absorbed it, you haven't done a good job. If your audience is it's middle-aged people, you have to adapt to that. If it's older people, you have to adapt to that. If it's younger people, you have to adapt to that. If your message is serious, but you have to adapt it, make it so. There's been times where I had a really serious message, but I had to deliver it in a way that wasn't that serious. And I thought to myself, am I being disingenuous? Am I taking away from my message? And my answer is always no. Your audience is your indicator. Read them, learn from them, and give them what they want. And if you do that, every single speaking engagement will be a hit.
Wow. Wow, that's wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Soban. It was wonderful talking to you, wonderful having you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm very, very happy.
Into a lot of things.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a great podcast.
I look forward to seeing it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Harminder.
Perfect. All right.